Hello everyone. So today I'm going to discuss about speech mechanism. So when we talk about speech mechanism, we have to know what is voice. So when you say voice, it is air resonated, amplified, shifted in pitch, and shaped into sounds which we call words. So these four phrases, air resonated, amplified, shifted in pitch, and shaped into sounds, these are the keywords that you need to remember with regards to the process of how we produce our voice. So there are many parts of speech mechanism that are involved in this production, and it is divided into four major parts. So first, we have what we call the motor parts. So it's just like the engine of the car. With motor parts, these parts produce the most important thing that we need for voice production, and that is air. So when you say air, it is vital in the speech production, and of course we have to have an enough supply of it during speech delivery. And when we talk about motor parts, this involves the diaphragm, the lungs, the windpipe, the muscles, ribs, and other bones. And when you say diaphragm, of course this is the muscle that contracts and expand every time we inhale and we exhale. And when we talk about lungs, of course, this is composed of air sacs, wherein inside the air sacs you can have the small veins, we can call them bronchioles, and it is actually attached to windpipe, or in scientific term we call it trachea. And we also need to involve the ribs and other bones, though they don't produce air, but they protect the motor parts. Second, we have what we call the vibrators. So when we have enough air supply in our body, we need these parts to produce the sound. And these vibrators actually involves two parts. We have the larynx and the vocal cords. Okay, so how did these vibrators produce sound? When the air passes through the larynx, it will pass through what we call the glottis, which is actually the space in between the vocal cords. And once the air passes through, the vocal cords vibrate. Okay, so once it vibrates, it will produce the sound. However, the sound that is being produced by vibrators are not loud enough for us to hear. That's why we need the third set of parts for speech production, and these are called resonators. So the volume of sound produced by vibrators, as what I've said, is not enough, so we need some amplifiers. Okay, so these parts involve pharynx, mouth, and nasal cavity. So our pharynx, actually in layman's term, we call it throat. So if you observe our throat, it's like a tube. So once the sound passes through it, it would amplify the sound. And of course our mouth has a space, right? So when you are shouting, you can never shout with your mouth closed. Of course. So when you shout, you need to open your mouth wide so that you can amplify your voice. And of course your nasal cavity, that is found actually somewhere here. It is connected to our nose. Of course, there's a hollow space. If you have seen a skull before, and when you open it up, there's a hollow space in it, and that is our nasal cavity. So our nasal cavity is very sensitive. That's why when you try to go to the beach, and then when the seawater may enter in from your nose, go into your nasal cavity, it doesn't really feel right. It's kind of painful because, of course, our nasal cavity is sensitive. And of course, our nose also tries to protect our nasal cavity from foreign materials, just like dust. So that's why inside our nose we have what we call the cilia, or the hair-like structure, to trap the dust particles that might enter the nasal cavity. But if it's too heavy already, our nasal cavity will produce mucus, and of course it traps these dust, and it will produce, you know already what it is. Okay, so of course this pharynx, mouth, and nasal cavity, these are the resonators. And this time you have enough air, you have sound produced, it is now amplified, but it would be meaningless, it would be useless if you just say but you don't actually shape your sounds. So that's why we need the last set of parts, and we call them articulators. Okay, so the sound produced by above mentioned parts are useless, so we need to shape them, and once we shape them, these are called words. So what are the articulators in our speech production? So it's actually divided into two groups. You have the immovable articulators, which involves hard palate, upper teeth, and upper gum ridge. Later, I will show you where it is, okay? Of course, your hard palate is like the arcing area in your mouth wall. It's on top, after your gum ridge. Your gum ridge is just at the back of your upper teeth. Of course, in this part, you could not move them, okay? But of course, we have what we call the movable articulators. So this involves the lips, the tongue, the lower teeth, the jaw, and the soft palate. Of course, we can move our lips. Imagine if you don't have lips, you cannot produce the sounds P, P, and B, P, and B. Because you need to use your upper lip and your lower lip for you to produce the sounds. And of course, your tongue. And when you talk about tongue, that is one of the strongest muscles in our body. And when it comes to speech mechanism, tongue is divided into 4 parts. You have the tip of the tongue, which is called the apex. You have the front of the tongue, the middle of the tongue, and the back of the tongue. So why the tongue is divided into these 4 parts? Of course, you touch different parts of your tongue depending on the sound that you're going to produce. For example, you're going to produce the sound of letter T. So if you observe that one, what is the part of the tongue that is touching to the mouth roof? Right, it's the tip of the tongue, or what we call apex. Apex is A-P-E-X, okay? Apex. And let's say you will produce the sound of letter K. So what part of the tongue is touching the mouth roof? Yes, that's right. It is the back of the tongue. So see, different sounds actually requires different parts of our tongue. So that's why it's divided into 4 parts. Again, we have apex, or the tip of the tongue, front of the tongue, middle of the tongue, and the back of the tongue, okay? Of course, our lower teeth, we can move that because it is attached to our jaw. So here. So when you try to close and open your mouth, you can feel the movement of your jaw, okay? And your soft palate is actually after your hard palate. There is like a soft skin, okay? On that part, it's kind of wrinkled. So once you open your mouth, it stretches out, all right? Okay, so that is your soft palate. Okay, so now those are the different parts of speech production. So so of course, with these parts, it involves different processes, or stages rather, in the speech production process. So the motor parts actually are being used in the first stage, which is called initiation. So in this stage, you are producing air. And then, followed by the second stage, the sound production, which is called the vibration. So it involves the vibrators. Third stage will be the resonation. It involves resonators. And articulation, it involves articulators. So if you observe, when you talk about parts, it ends with ers, right? But when we talk about production, it ends with shon, alright? So take note of that. Initiation, vibration, resonation, and articulation. Okay, so now I'll be showing you a picture, and I will discuss the different parts of speech mechanism. So here it is. Okay, so I'll be naming them, so you get your notes and you write them out. Number 1 is your nasal cavity. So as what I've said, from your nose going here, right? So it actually goes into your nasal cavity. Number 2 is the oral cavity. So when you say oral cavity, is this part here. They are all parts of the oral cavity. Number 3 are your lips. So when you're going to answer it, just write lips, okay, with a S. And then 4 would be your teeth. 5 is your upper gum ridge. 6 is your hard palate. 7 is your soft palate. And 8 is what we call the uvula. It's U-V-U-L-A, okay? That's your uvula. You can actually see that one when you open your mouth. In between your tonsils, in between the circle, there's like a bell-like structure there. That is your uvula. And then number 9 is the tongue in general. Number 10 here is the apex, or the tip of the tongue. 11 is the front of the tongue. 12 is the middle of the tongue, and 13 is back of the tongue. Okay, great. And number 14 here is your nasal passage. Of course, this is the passage from your mouth going to your nasal cavity. Number 15 is pharynx, or your throat. Number 16 is what we call the epiglottis. So the spelling is E-P-I-G-L-O-T-T-I-S. Epiglottis. So epiglottis actually is a covering of your larynx. I guess you have heard already the statement that do not talk when your mouth is full. Why? Because you got kind of choke, okay? So why we choke? It's because when we are talking, the epiglottis will open, okay? So that you can produce the sound, okay, for your voice production. And then when we stop talking, the epiglottis will close. So therefore, class, when we are eating and when we try to, of course, we chew our food, and when we intake our food, of course, if we are talking while we are eating, the tendency is the epiglottis will open. So instead that the food particles will pass through your throat going to your esophagus, there's a tendency that it might go to the larynx because the epiglottis is open. And of course, our brain is so smart, the muscles in our larynx will try to release a strong force so that these food particles will go out from that area, and that's why we tend to choke, okay? The food will actually go towards your mouth, or if the force is too strong, then it might go to your nose if you have tried that one. So that's why you should not talk when your mouth is full, okay? It's because you might harm your larynx, because larynx is only intended for voice production, right? Because our food should pass through our esophagus going to our stomach. Okay. Number 18 here is, of course, the space in between your vocal cords is what I've mentioned a while ago, and that is called the glottis, okay? G-L-O-T-T-I-S, okay? The glottis. 17 here are your vocal cords, and take note of the spelling for vocal cords. The cords doesn't have H, okay? Just like guitar chords, it's only C-O-R-D-S. And 19 is, of course, your larynx, okay? The overall larynx. Alright, so I hope you understand the speech mechanism, and good luck!